For decades, the United States government completely denied their operations, their funding, and their very name. They didn't exist on paper, and they didn't exist in the news. While the conventional army relied on massive numbers and rigid bureaucracy, this unit was engineered from the ground up for a completely different kind of warfare. It was designed for maximum lethal efficiency and total flexibility, operating under its own unique rules. To understand how the Pentagon created such a highly calculated machine, we have to look at the exact moment the traditional rules of war broke down. In the mid-20th century, the global threat changed forever, exposing a critical vulnerability in the American military. It was a crisis that forced a complete transformation of special operations, and it all began with a brutal tactical vacuum that one man set out to fill. To truly understand the Delta Force, we have to look back at a chaotic and terrifying period in world history, the late 1960s and 1970s. This era was defined by a brutal, fast-growing global threat that conventional military forces were completely unprepared to handle: international terrorism. Massive, coordinated airplane hijackings, political assassinations, embassy takeovers, and the horrific massacre of Israeli athletes at the 1972 Munich Olympics left world leaders desperate. The traditional military machine, built for massive tank battles and large-scale warfare, was entirely useless against small, cell-based, fanatical groups operating in crowded urban environments. The United States military had unmatched firepower, nuclear capabilities, and massive divisions, but it completely lacked a highly specialized, surgically precise counter-terrorism unit. At this critical moment, one man stepped forward to change military history forever: Colonel Charles Beckwith. Beckwith was a legendary, battle-hardened U.S. Army Special Forces officer. In the early 1960s, he had served a unique exchange tour with the British Special Air Service, famously known as the SAS, during a brutal jungle conflict in Malaya. Beckwith didn't just train with the British elite, he fought alongside them. He was deeply impressed by their revolutionary methodology. The SAS didn't look for loud, muscle-bound, stereotypical soldiers. Instead, they selected quiet, highly independent, and deeply intellectual individuals who could adapt to any environment, think on their feet, and operate completely alone, deep inside hostile territory. When Beckwith returned to America, he was determined to modernize the U.S. military. For years, he campaigned heavily, trying to convince the Pentagon that the United States desperately needed an exact equivalent to the British SAS. However, his ideas faced immense bureaucratic resistance. Traditional, conventional military generals fiercely blocked his proposals for nearly a decade. They feared that a highly elite, fiercely independent unit with its own rules would disrupt the strict traditional chain of command. But by 1977, as global terrorism reached a boiling point, the Pentagon could no longer ignore the danger. Beckwith finally received the official green light. In late 1977, the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta was formally activated, with Beckwith established as its very first commanding officer. However, the young, newly formed unit's first major geopolitical test would end in absolute heartbreaking tragedy. In November 1979, radical Iranian militants stormed the United States Embassy in Tehran, taking 52 American citizens hostage. Diplomatic efforts failed completely, and Delta Force was called upon to execute their first real-world mission, Operation Eagle Claw. The plan was incredibly complex, dangerous, and heavily reliant on absolute precision. It required multiple long-range transport planes and specialized helicopters to fly deeply into hostile Iranian airspace, meeting at a remote, pitch-black desert staging location, codenamed Desert 1. The mission quickly descended into an absolute disaster. A massive, unexpected, and violent desert dust storm, known as a haboob, completely blinded the pilots in the darkness. Several helicopters suffered mechanical failures, realizing they no longer had enough functional aircraft to safely rescue the hostages. The commanders made the painful decision to abort the mission. But during the chaotic evacuation at Desert 1, a helicopter tragically collided with a C-130O transport aircraft, triggering a massive fiery explosion. 8 American service members lost their lives in the inferno. The unit had to retreat, leaving behind burning wreckage and the bodies of their comrades. It was a humiliating, devastating failure that was broadcast on global television news. Yet, instead of destroying Delta Force, this immense tragedy became the catalyst that saved it. The disaster forced the Pentagon to realize that the military lacked a unified Special Operations Command. In the immediate aftermath of Operation Eagle Claw, the United States government created the Joint Special Operations Command and established the 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the legendary Night Stalkers. This guaranteed that Delta Force would always have its own elite, hyper-specialized pilots and would never again fail a mission due to poor transport or bad coordination. Now that you understand the bloody history and the tactical origins of Delta Force, a logical question arises. How does a soldier actually become a part of this elite ghost unit? The short and brutal answer is simple. You don't find Delta, Delta finds you. If you are an ordinary civilian, a high school graduate, or even a highly decorated SWAT officer in a major city, the doors to this organization are permanently and completely locked. There is no public recruiting office in any American city, there is no phone number you can call, and there is absolutely no website where you can submit a standard resume. To even have your file looked at by a Delta Force recruiter, you must already be a hardened, experienced professional, serving within the active duty ranks of the United States military. The entry requirements are designed to filter out 99% of the armed forces before the physical tests even begin. First, Delta Force almost exclusively recruits candidates from the United States Army. While they can legally accept individuals from other military branches like the Navy or Marine Corps, over 90 to 95% of all applicants come from two specific hyper-elite pools: the 75th Ranger Regiment and the United States Army Special Forces, famously known as the Green Berets. These are men who have already survived some of the most brutal selection processes on the planet, possess years of combat experience, and have multiple real-world deployments under their belts. Furthermore, the bureaucratic and basic physical baselines are extraordinarily high. A candidate must be a male United States citizen, hold a high-level secret security clearance, and usually falls into a specific age bracket, typically between 22 and 35 years old. This age requirement is critical to the unit's philosophy. Delta Force is not looking for 18-year-old recruits who are filled with youthful adrenaline, Hollywood fantasies, and reckless energy. They don't want someone who is eager to die for their country. They want someone who can survive for it. They need mature, grown men who possess deep emotional stability, real-world life experience, and a proven track record of making calm, analytical, split-second decisions while being heavily shot at by the enemy. Candidates must also score exceptionally high on the ASVAB, which is the military's intellectual and technical aptitude test. But the most fascinating and tightly guarded requirement is the hidden one: absolute psychological balance and the mindset of what they call the quiet professional. Delta strictly rejects the Rambo stereotype. They do not want aggressive, loud-mouthed lone wolves who are looking for personal glory or want to destroy everything in sight. They are searching for the master chess player who can also fire a rifle with surgical precision. They need individuals who can perfectly blend into a normal civilian crowd, look completely ordinary, and yet possess a brilliant, hyper-focused mind capable of managing extreme chaos. Twice a year, Delta recruiters quietly travel to military bases across the country, reviewing thousands of service records in absolute secret. Out of those thousands, only a select few hundred will ever receive a formal handwritten invitation to attend the actual selection course. And for those chosen few, that invitation is an entry ticket into a psychological and physical living hell. The formal selection process for Delta Force is a legendary, brutal gauntlet designed to do one specific thing: break a human being completely down until there is nothing left but their true character. Held twice a year in the dense, rugged wilderness of the Appalachian Mountains, this month-long course is run in absolute isolation. There are no cheering instructors, no motivational speeches, and no team support. From the moment the candidates arrive, the instructors behave like stone-cold observers. They do not yell, they do not give praise, and most terrifyingly, they never tell the candidates how much time they have left to complete a task, or what the passing score even is. You are competing entirely against yourself, wrapped in a blanket of psychological fog. The first phase focuses on crushing physical conditioning, standard land navigation, and extreme sleep deprivation. Candidates are forced to march long distances across jagged mountains, carrying heavy rucksacks that weigh anywhere from 40 to 50 pounds, not including their rifles. But the true nightmare begins with what is known as the stress marches. Candidates are dropped off alone in the middle of the wilderness in the dead of night. They are given a set of map coordinates and a compass. They must navigate through thick swamps, steep ravines, and heavy brush to find the next checkpoint. When they finally reach a checkpoint, exhausted and bleeding, they are not allowed to rest. An instructor simply notes their arrival time and hands them a new set of coordinates. The distances increase every single day, while food rations and sleep are deeply cut. This all builds up to the final ultimate physical test, the infamous long walk. This is a brutal 64-kilometer march across the roughest mountain terrain imaginable, while carrying a fully loaded 60-pound rucksack. Candidates must complete this agonizing journey completely alone, with a strict, hidden time limit, usually around 20 hours. Yet, surviving the long walk only gets a candidate to the most dangerous part of the selection, the commander's board. The remaining survivors, physically hollowed out and completely exhausted, are placed in a cold room in front of a panel of senior Delta officers and military psychologists. For hours, they are bombarded with highly confusing, deeply personal, and stressful questions. The board deliberately targets the candidates' psychological weak points, trying to make them lose their temper, expose a hidden ego, or show signs of mental fragility. The officers are not looking for the strongest muscles anymore, they are looking for absolute mental stability in the midst of total chaos. Out of the several hundred elite soldiers who started the course, often less than 10 to 15 men will pass. Those who fail are quietly sent back to their regular units, forbidden from ever speaking about what they experienced in the mountains. Unlike a conventional army built on rigid hierarchy, Delta Force relies on tactical, decentralized freedom. The unit's classified structure is built around 4 primary assault squadrons, A, B, C, and D, each divided into specialized troops focusing on halo jumps, combat driving, or scuba operations. They are backed by East Squadron's covert aviation and a massive support matrix, where for every single operator, 10 specialists provide tech, intelligence, and logistics support. Inside their secure compound at Fort Liberty, traditional military rules are paused. Operators don't salute and use first names instead of ranks. This flat hierarchy allows a sergeant to correct a colonel instantly, prioritizing critical thinking over bureaucracy. This efficiency extends to the field through relaxed grooming standards. With beards and civilian clothes, operators blend into any crowd worldwide. They move as ghosts, driving rental cars and looking like ordinary tourists, completely invisible until the exact microsecond they strike. To execute their highly classified, high-stakes missions, Delta Force operators require the absolute pinnacle of military technology. They do not use standard-issue military gear. Instead, Delta operates with an unlimited budget, allowing them to test, customize, and modify every single piece of equipment they carry. Their arsenal is a mix of cutting-edge engineering, hyper-expensive optics, and specialized vehicles designed to give them an unfair advantage over any enemy in the dark. The primary, iconic weapon of Delta Force is the Heckler & Koch HK-416 assault rifle. In the early 2000s, Delta operators were deeply unsatisfied with the reliability of the standard American M4 carbine, which frequently jammed in sandy environments. Delta literally worked hand-in-hand with German engineers from Heckler & Koch to design a completely new gas piston system. The result was the HK-416, a weapon so reliable and structurally durable it can fire thousands of rounds without cleaning, even after being submerged in mud or water. For close-quarters battle, they often chamber their rifles in specialized calibers like .300 AAC Blackout, combined with high-end custom-built suppressors that make their shots nearly silent. Their sidearms are equally customized customized, usually consisting of highly modified Glock 19 or Glock 47 pistols, equipped with red dot optics and match-grade triggers. But where Delta Force truly completely dominates the battlefield is in the dark. Their most famous piece of individual gear is the GPNV G18. Unlike standard night vision devices that look like a single or double tube, these goggles feature 4 distinct lenses. This unique design expands an operator's field of view from a narrow 40 degrees to a massive 97 degrees. Wearing these hyper-expensive $40,000 devices, Delta operators do not have to turn their heads to see threats in their peripheral vision. In total darkness, while the enemy is completely blind, Delta moves through hallways and compounds at full combat speed, seeing the world in a clear, high-definition green or white phosphorus glow. When it comes to transportation, Delta relies heavily on speed, stealth, and mobility. For ground insertions, they use highly customized open-air combat vehicles like the ALV, or Advanced Light Vehicle, and specialized tactical buggies. These vehicles have no doors, windows, or heavy armor. For long-range hidden insertions from the sky, they utilize stealth-modified transport aircraft. But their primary ride into battle is the MH-6 Little Bird helicopter, flown by the elite pilots of the 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment. The extreme effectiveness of Delta Force is forged through a hyper-realistic training cycle. Its core is a multi-million-dollar tactical facility at Fort Liberty, known as the House of Horrors. This indoor shooting complex can be mechanically reconfigured within minutes to replicate any real-world target. What sets Delta apart is the mandatory use of live ammunition during all close-quarters battle drills. To build absolute trust under pressure, real human beings, often teammates or military psychologists, sit in chairs playing hostages. The assault team breaches doors using explosives and fires live rounds centimeters away from their comrades to eliminate targets. There is zero room for error. The true lethal capability of Delta Force is proven through decades of classified, high-stakes combat operations. While many successful missions remain secret, several historic deployments have defined the unit legacy. The most famous engagement occurred in 1993 during the Battle of Mogadishu, which inspired the movie Black Hawk Down. When 2 helicopters were shot down, Delta operators fought alongside Army Rangers against thousands of militia. During this brutal battle, 2 Delta snipers, Gary Gordon and Randy Shuggart, volunteered to be dropped into the crash site to protect a wounded pilot. They fought to their last breath, saving the pilot life, and were posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. In the 2000s, Delta became the primary weapon for capturing high-value targets. In December 2003, during Operation Red Dawn, Delta operators tracked down Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein, finding him hidden inside a small underground spider hole near Tikrit. Beyond these missions, the legacy of Delta Force is carried by its prominent veterans. Founding member Eric Haney wrote the book Inside Delta Force, breaking the unit wall of silence for the first time. These men and their operations prove that Delta is not a myth. It is a highly calculated, silent force that alters global history from the shadows.